There is a place on this planet where the traditional laws of geometry, urban planning, and human spatial orientation completely cease to exist. This is a city where you can enter an elevator on the 22nd floor of a skyscraper, step out onto what you believe is the solid ground level, only to find yourself looking down at another 30-story apartment complex directly beneath your feet. This is a metropolis where roads run parallel to the rooftops of houses, where high-speed trains do not avoid skyscrapers, but violently slice directly through the center of them, and where the sheer scale of overlapping infrastructure creates a real-world dystopian matrix. Welcome to Chongqing, known across China as the 8D Magic City. Spanning over 80,000 square kilometers along the jagged, mist-shrouded basins of the Yangtze and Jialing rivers, it is one of the most populous and geographically hostile urban sprawl centers ever managed by mankind. For centuries, the mountainous terrain of the Sichuan Basin made this region an impassable, rugged fortress. But the modern forces of extreme industrialization and economic expansion forced China to transform this vertical mountain range into a concrete jungle of 32 million people. Because there was virtually zero flat land to build upon, civil engineers could not expand outward. They were forced to declare an absolute high-stakes war against gravity. They decided to build a city completely vertically, engineering an impossible structural network that conquers the sky and the deep mountain abyss simultaneously. To comprehend the sheer structural insanity of Chongqing, you must first look at its most notorious engineering nightmare, the Huangjuiwan interchange. On a standard map, a highway junction is a simple two-dimensional intersection. In Chongqing, it is a 5-level deep, multi-tiered concrete labyrinth that suspends drivers hundreds of feet in the air. The construction of this massive node was a logistical and mathematical crisis that took over a decade to complete. Engineers had to weave 20 independent curving highway ramps together, separating traffic into 8 entirely different geographic directions. The scale of the concrete pillars supporting this matrix is staggering. Colossal, heavily reinforced pillars, thicker than industrial shipping silos, slam deep into the underlying mountain rock, holding up layers of asphalt that stack directly on top of each other, like a giant, twisting concrete puzzle. The air here is perpetually damp, thick with river fog and industrial smog that clings to the raw concrete surfaces, giving the entire structure a dark, gritty, cyberpunk aesthetic. Driving through this interchange is an exercise in psychological disorientation. It is a structural anomaly so dense and complex that modern satellite GPS navigation systems are completely blinded by the vertical stacking. The signals bounce off the multiple layers of concrete, leaving drivers lost inside a floating, multi-level maze with no clear view of the sky. But overlapping highways were merely the baseline of what Chongqing's engineering teams had to overcome. As the population exploded, the city required a massive, high-speed mass transit monorail system to move millions of workers daily. However, the path of the projected line ran directly into a pre-existing massive 19-story residential apartment block. Traditional urban planning would dictate demolishing the building, a process that would cost millions and displace hundreds of families. Chongqing's engineers chose a path of raw architectural arrogance. They decided not to go around the building, and they refused to tear it down. Instead, they decided to drill an industrial tunnel straight through the middle of it. This birthed the world-famous Lizaba station. To make this impossible fusion of high-speed mass transit and residential living functional, engineers had to solve a violent physics problem. A heavy monorail train traveling at high speeds generates massive kinetic vibrations and deafening structural noise that would easily crack traditional concrete walls and make human habitation inside the building unlivable. The solution was a masterclass in isolated structural dynamics. Engineers physically separated the train station from the apartment block, building independent support pillars inside the building's core that do not touch the residential walls by even a fraction of an inch. They embedded massive, heavy-duty rubberized acoustic dampeners and hydraulic shock absorbers beneath the tracks. When the heavy steel-framed train thunders directly through the 6th, 7th, and 8th floors of the building, the immense kinetic energy is entirely swallowed by the isolated foundations. Inside the neighboring apartments, the violent passage of a multi-ton train registers as nothing more than a faint, low-frequency whisper, while outside, the sight of a train disappearing into a living skyscraper looks like a scene straight out of a sci-fi dystopia. The vertical warfare does not stop at the city limits. As you move out of the dense urban core and into the sheer limestone mountains surrounding the Chongqing municipality, the topography becomes even more violent and unforgiving. To connect isolated mountain communities and industrial outposts, engineers could not build traditional flat roads. They had to forge extreme spiral highways that hang precariously over the absolute abyss. These structures, known as the loop bridges, are essentially vertical corkscrews made of steel and concrete. Instead of driving straight up a steep, lethal cliff face, vehicles must climb a continuous, spiraling ramp that tightly wraps around itself, ascending hundreds of feet within a tiny horizontal footprint. Building these spiral lifelines required high-altitude construction of the most dangerous kind. Heavy crawler cranes had to be systematically disassembled, hauled up narrow mountain tracks piece by piece, and reassembled on the edges of sheer vertical cliffs. Workers, battling sudden, violent mountain wind shears and thick, blinding fog that rolls off the rivers below, dangled from safety lines over 1,000-foot drops. They utilized heavy pneumatic pile drivers to smash giant steel casings deep into the unstable limestone rock, pouring specialized, high-strength concrete to form the spindly, towering pillars that hold the spiral roads aloft. The result is a terrifying driving experience where cars ascend into the clouds, tracing a tight, dizzying loop with absolutely nothing but a thin guardrails separating them from a lethal drop into the misty abyss below. The entire city of Chongqing operates as a moving, living, three-dimensional matrix. Everything is layered. A pedestrian can walk across a beautifully landscaped public park, look over the edge of a stone retaining wall, and realize they are standing directly on top of the roof of a 5-story shopping mall. A driver can park their car on what looks like a standard street, step out, and look down to see an entire underground network of multi-lane roads, subways, and bustling walking streets operating directly beneath the asphalt. The sheer density of concrete and steel is overwhelming. The city contains over 10,000 bridges, crossing massive river deltas and slicing through mountain gorges, earning it the official title of China's capital of bridges. The aesthetic is raw, industrial, and unyielding. The constant moisture from the rivers causes the massive concrete facades to weather rapidly, creating streaks of dark gray and rust that contrast violently with the brilliant, blinding neon advertisements that cover the skyscrapers at night. When darkness falls over the Sichuan Basin, the true jaw-dropping scale of this vertical marvel comes alive. The city transforms into a glowing, multi-layered grid of pure adrenaline and engineering dominance. From the perspective of a high-altitude drone pulling back through the heavy river mist, the visual reality is mind-bending. You can see massive river barges navigating the dark waters of the Yangtze at the lowest level. Directly above them, multi-lane suspension bridges carry thousands of cars across the water. Stacking above the bridges, high-speed monorail trains fly through the air on narrow concrete beams, disappearing directly into the glowing neon bellies of skyscrapers. Higher still, roads wind around the mountain peaks, with headlights tracing the sweeping, impossible curves of the spiral highways in the clouds. Chongqing is not just a city, it is a brutalist masterpiece of vertical engineering. It is the ultimate manifestation of human endurance, architectural defiance, and heavy industrial power over extreme, hostile nature. China didn't just build a city here, they completely reshaped the vertical limits of human civilization, turning a treacherous mountain range into a living, breathing, three-dimensional empire of concrete and steel.
Brace yourselves. The shear is hitting hard. Secure the load. Watch out below.
The future is now. The future is Neo Shanghai.